Welcome to this week's Agronomy Update. My name is Devin and I'm the head of Pioneer Sales with Osmus Farm Supply. Today I'm going to talk about two topics that I get a lot of questions on. The first one is tip back in corn, and the second one is SDS in soybeans. Regarding tip back, while I believe it certainly is present in the area, it may not be as bad as we think, sometimes in all cases. The thing to focus on is how many healthy kernels are on each ear. I'm going to show you an example right now of some tip back in our area. As you can see, there is a fair amount of tip back, yet the ear is 18 kernels around and 30 kernels long. This has the potential to exceed 200 bushel even with the tip back. So what causes tip back in corn? First of all, let's look at how an ear is pollinated. The silks from the bud of the ear are first to emerge. This process continues up the ear to the tip. When all is well, you end up with a fully pollinated, healthy ear. However, it is understood that the silks near the tip are later and slower to emerge. This increases the potential for the late silks to either miss pollination altogether or have younger kernels near the tip. The challenge with younger kernels is that they are more likely to abort given environmental stresses. In the image, it looks like the tip of the ear did not pollinate, yet as you continue down the ear, there are kernels that did pollinate but aborted early in the kernel development. Now that we discussed briefly how an ear does pollinate, let's look at the stresses that we may have seen in 2016. First of all, it seems unlikely that moisture stress would be an issue. We had very timely rains throughout the season. It is most likely a combination of several factors. It could be the heat stress that we saw during the early part of pollination, the lack of sunshine during the middle part of the summer, or potentially some nutrient stresses may be a factor as well. It's worth noting that we have observed certain cases where a hybrid shows more tip back with some planting dates over others. This serves as a good reminder that we can help manage our risk by staggering our flowering period through hybrid selection and different planting dates. Again, I want to emphasize that even though we are observing some tip back in the area, it is important to focus on the healthy kernels on the ear. In many cases, the yield potential still may be there. Now let me transition to soybeans and talk about sudden death syndrome, also known as SDS. SDS is one of the most impactful diseases facing soybean producers in the Midwest. One of the symptoms that initially appear is yellow blotches on the soybean leaves between the veins. These yellow blotches expand and eventually turn brown, ultimately killing the entire leaf. Typically, as the disease progresses, you can find bluish patches along the root. These are the spore masses of the fungus. The earlier the infection, the more significant the yield impact. For example, if infection starts to show up shortly after flowering, then the yield loss will likely be significant. By contrast, if the plant is developing seeds in the upper canopy before symptoms show, you may not experience much yield loss. SDS is ultimately caused by a form of the fusarium fungus that is in the soil. While fusarium is the cause of the SDS infection, there are certain environmental conditions or management practices that may make the plants more susceptible. These include early planting into cool, wet soils, compaction zones. For example, oftentimes along field entrances or heavy traffic pattern areas, you may see SDS showing up first. And thirdly, poorly drained areas. However, there are a few things you can do to help manage this disease. Number one, plant varieties that have good resistance to SDS. Number two, delay your planting a little bit. However, you need to be careful because if you delay too much, you can have yield loss there as well. Number three, take steps to reduce compaction in your field. Number four, there are some new seed treatments that work on SDS. Be sure to talk to your seed dealer or local agronomist to get more information on those. It is interesting to note that while crop rotation is effective in controlling many diseases, it may not be effective in controlling SDS. Studies have shown that many years of continuous corn do not necessarily reduce the occurrence of SDS. That's all for now. Thank you for watching this week's edition of the Agronomy Update. For further questions and resources on any of these topics, please see your AFS agronomist.